The Little Mouse Who Saved Christmas by Jamie Hinson-Rieger, illustrated by Claudia Brooks. Once upon a time, there was a little mouse who lived in the hollow of a loose cobblestone at the bottom of a fireplace, in a small but friendly Unitarian Universalist church in a small, friendly town in the Midwest. Now every year, in this little UU church, they had a Christmas Eve service. And every year after the service, the church had a time for coffee and cookies. And every year after the coffee and cookies, after the church people had said their goodbyes and gone off singing into the frosty winter air, back to their beds to wait for Santa to arrive on Christmas morning. Well, every year, the sexton of that church would gather up the leftover Christmas cookies, of which there were always several dozen, and he would put them on a plate and put them on the floor beside the fireplace. And then he too would go home. The sextons at the church had been doing this for so long, they'd forgotten why they did it. It was just a tradition. The mouse loved this tradition. She enjoyed listening to the friendly people chat and laugh with each other after the service, and she especially enjoyed the plate of cookies. She would nibble on a delicious warm Christmas cookie until she had had her fill. But the most magical part came at midnight every year, when Santa's sleigh would fly high up above over the chimney, and the plate of cookies would lift off the ground and fly up the chimney, up, up, up into the air, and onto Santa's sleigh, as if by magic. Which it was. A lot of people don't know this, but leaving cookies and other treats for Santa isn't just a nice thing to do. It's essential. It takes a lot of calories to power Santa's sleigh as he and his elves and reindeer deliver presents all over the world. And the little UU church, in this little Midwestern town without knowing it, had become over the years a very important refueling stop on Santa's route over the Midwest, where homes were spread much farther apart and cookies harder to come by. But this year was different. The little mouse was still lying warm in her hollow in the fireplace, but there were no people laughing and chatting inside the church, because they were all having church on Zoom this year. There was no coffee and cookies, and consequently no plate put in the chimney for Santa. The sexton was safe at home, watching the church service in his bed, in his pajamas. The mouse missed the people. She definitely missed the cookies. It was a hard winter for a church mouse in a church with no people. There was scarcely any food, and after a hard week of scavenging, the little church mouse had managed to find just one small crumb of cookie, which she had decided to save for herself, to eat at midnight while Santa's sleigh flew high overhead. Santa's sleigh! The mouse realized with a start that if there were no cookies for her, that meant there were no cookies for Santa's sleigh. She looked at the clock on the church wall. It was 11:55 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Meanwhile, from high up above in the air, the little elf riding in the front of the sleigh beside Santa frowned and tapped on the indicator light of the sleigh dashboard. He picked up the radio and called the North Pole. "Elf Command, this is Sleigh Dog 1, he said. "I'm getting no reading on cookies at the UU Church here. I repeat, sleigh radar is showing no cookies at the UU Church. Can you please confirm cookies, Elf Command?" From the North Pole, Elf Command said, "Hang on, Sleigh Dog 1. We're checking ground radar for cookies." The elf waited. Then Elf Command came back on the radio. "Sleigh Dog 1. Ground radar shows no cookies at the UU Church. Repeat, no cookies at the UU Church." Elf Command, that's a problem," said the elf beside Santa in the sleigh. "Our indicators show we're running seriously low on cookie fuel here. It's been a rough night for cookies this year." From the North Pole, Elf Command said, "Sleigh Dog 1, suggest alternate cookie sites. Is there a Starbucks nearby?" The elf in the sleigh sounded a little panicked now. "Negative, Elf Command. There are no Starbucks open at midnight on Christmas Eve." We're coming over the church running really low here now. The word came back from the North Pole. Sleigh Dog 1, you need to call it a night and come on home. Negative, said Santa, shaking his head. On the dashboard, the cookie indicator light began to blink red. The sleigh lurched and dropped a little lower in the sky. Inside the little UU church, the mouse was racing through the kitchen. Once upon a time, there was a pantry full of boxes and snacks. Perhaps something had been left behind. She squeezed in under the pantry door, but the pantry had been emptied, the boxes of snacks taken home. She squeezed into cabinets, empty. The church was truly bare of cookie, not even a crumb, except, she realized, for the one crumb she had saved for herself. The little mouse raced from the kitchen back to her cobblestone hollow in the fireplace, and without a second thought, she picked up her one crumb of cookie and placed it in the center of the fireplace. She didn't even have a plate. Would this work? Suddenly, she felt herself being lifted up, 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 as she and the crumb were levitated through the air, all the way up to Santa's sleigh, as if by magic. Which it was. The sleigh was shaking and beginning to dip down lower and lower. The cookie indicator light was blinking an angry red. The little mouse nudged the cookie crumb toward Santa with her tiny paw. Santa picked up the crumb with the tip of his finger and placed it in a little hollow in the dashboard. All at once, the sleigh shot back up high in the air, and the cookie indicator light turned from red to green. The elf gave a sigh of relief. And Santa laughed his jolly ho, 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 his belly shaking like, well, you know. The mouse was relieved too. But how, she wondered. How could such a tiny crumb power Santa's sleigh when it took a whole giant plate of cookies before? Santa responded to the mouse as if he could read her mind, which of course he could. My sleigh doesn't really run on cookies, little mouse, he said. It runs on kindness. And you giving away your one crumb so everyone else could have Christmas was the kindest act we've seen in many years. We'll easily have power enough now to get through the rest of the night, thanks to you. The little mouse spent the rest of the night beside Santa and the elves, happy to be with people again as they made their way through the night and across the country, spreading Christmas cheer all along the way. The end.